What?
Wanna go to the email chain?
The email chain? I'm good, I guess.
What?
I'm good, I guess.
Is that like yes or no?
That's whatever you feel like. I really don't care.
Okay. Then no, I guess.
Sure.
Doesn't matter.
That gets the round started quicker, right?
It really doesn't change anything.
All this commentary has been recorded.
Okay.
Hold on. Saving file as. Berkeley hates me. Actually, it's not good. It's like really good debates. I enjoy debates, so it's good. Yes.
So everyone can see what Stan talking to himself. Yeah.
What? Yeah, that's basically all the show. Harvard Westlake CC verse. Should do as Interlake, right?
Locking the eye.
Did not show you as Interlake. I read it as something else.
Close.
I knew it
Wasn't it all close?
Reasonability.
reasonability in code.
I don't know if I'm gonna use the stand from this desk. I'm gonna have to switch to the or like
I can
speak
move.
from
I can
the
move to the end.
Oh, is that sure?
Or he can just use that podium.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Does that make sense?
Oh.
The podium right there. He's just going to use the
Okay.
podium. So don't take yourself off the podium.
Not using the stands.
Wonderful banter recorded.
Wait, that was active briefly, yeah. I'll do like half of it because I can do half during CX, but in case he takes like no prep, just gonna make this easier.
This is being recorded, so just so you know, this
Yeah.
I have to pre-flow.
I have no problem with that.
It's going to be known for all.
I'll do it.
How long is it get to that flame latency?
Oh, it hasn't been since I wrote this much.
Even if Renee gets the chance to look at the what is he? Huh? Are you for it?
No, flowing.
What?
Flowing is archaic.
Just help read the sentence.
I feel like in constructive speeches it almost leads to an extent.
Huh?
Flowing.
No, you never did for the one is he.
They know it's fast flowing.
In policy, maybe.
Yeah.
But in LD, there might be like a spike where it's like,
Like,
Okay, why are we still fine? You're ready. Yes, Alex, you're ready.
Yeah.
Okay, I am ready.
Part 1 is the framework, the roles, balance, or distinct position of dominant ideology, marginalized groups, educational spaces, for fauna. So, 3 powers of competition, powers of interactions of marginalization, paying attention to power is a step with educational equity, dominance, inclusion, inequality, educating policies, so people equal, attraction, equality people, and education of positive different experiences, trying acting against being educated, mentally, forms of inequality, working against agreeing explicit, and proper to marginalized individuals. Attempt to distract away from social realities is Republican, limiting the possibility of concrete social suppression, Curry 14. Despite the amount of debate is pointing real consequences, discussing social realities, consequences of one ideal theory over the form cell, and LT's essential consequence action problems, so appearances problems, theoretically, the scaffolding, and a real discussion of the concrete nature of oppression. We can also suggest that such problems are partially emerging beyond the effects of realizable within an ideological frame. Part 2 is inherency. Loopholes in federal law allow dating partners committing intimate partner violence to retain their guns, causing massive violence against women and queer survivors, EGS 14. Even though more women in the U.S. are killed by dating partners than my husband's, liberals continue to allow dating partners to possess guns. Each year, more than 1 million women are assaulted by an intimate partner. The presence of a gun in an intimate partner violence situation increases the risk that women will die by 500%. IPV is also common. Same-sex relationships, 1/3 of same-sex IPH were condemned with guns. Thus, the plan. The United States federal government ought to ban the private ownership of handguns for intimate partner violence offenders in non-cohabitating dating relationships beyond 15. Expand the Brady handgun violence prevention act to protect people in dating relationships by adding the word dating partners to existing provisions on domestic violence. A small change would ban convicted users of dating relationships promoting guns. Part 3 is solvency. Access to handguns uniquely increases the risk of violence and homicide. Plan is to reduce it. Maloney 15. When a gun is present, the risk of homicide increases by 500%. More than all the weapons combined with its individual choice. Majority of nations in partner homicides women are 11 times more likely to be murdered with a gun than women in other high-income countries. Of 1,650 women murdered by men, the most commonly used weapon was a handgun. Handguns empirically reduce IPV and do not cause a substitution effect. Mass CF 15. A handful of states and cities have moved to close the gap. Researchers the gun surrender laws have been successful. Cities and states with inflicted laws of 25% fewer domestic gun homicides compared to cities and states without them would be closed to not replace guns with other weapons. The other firearms and the level of use is staggering. The plan is empirically effective. It reduces homicides and background checks are successful. DS 15. Each state maintains their own individual laws, but all must abide by the basic federal law. Most states do not have a mandatory process to require vendors to run their laws. Their guns laws can make a difference. The states where background checks require 30% fewer women have been shot to death by an intimate partner. According to the FBI law, possession of possession of those convicted of stalking, dating abuse, related partners, are now responsible for the majority of cases for homicide facts. Control guns and intimate partner violence are indisputable. Handguns are uniquely problematic for intimate partner violence. Long guns are not concealable and give survivors more time to escape. Dixon 93. One has to adapt the reliability of statements of prisoners until firearms they were carried back in line with very common handguns are much more convenient. Concealability boarded in the home. Surprise factors, ability to handguns and apply people can only be underway the person carrying a shotgun easily and having such targets more likely to deliver to the murder by the soldier. They got to retrieve the long gun and load the survivors crucial seconds to escape. And IPV prevents any sorts of larger social movement control over a person's identity, factors, and potential for collective resistance. O'Doherty 15. IPV, if it reduces loss agency and the ability to control the world, social participation may be restricted, linked to loss opportunities to drive the benefits of group connections. IPV may lead to loss of identification with the collective or identification with abused. The specific lived experiences of survivors are more important than vague, large-scale social claims. Denton 84. Violent episodes flowing from one another. Violence must be examined from within. Although structural processes influence family violence remains or filtered through the lives of interacting individuals each room is singular binding the forces at a particular moment. IPV is perpetuated by a lack of education. Educational spaces must condemn IPV to start preventing this has tangible impacts. Wolf and Jack 99. IPV is learned behavior that is rewarded and supported by culture. IPV reflects inequality and reinforced by various institutions. IPV has been ignored as a major set of problems as long as it's accepted behavior by institutions. There's little chance of preventing strategies can introduce groups' values, thinking policies. Efforts can be targeted or directed at school-age children. Adolescents offers unique windows of opportunity for primary prevention efforts. Preliminary data report increases knowledge about dating violence issues. Lead positive strategies about dating violence. Self-reported decrease in the perpetration of dating violence. Guns atomize people by creating a politics of fear and individualism, which makes government oppression inevitable. Deborah Banner 15. The fragmentation of society into atomistic individuals records of right for oppression. More can be offered in a country where citizens are not united. There's no individualism or extreme on the gun rights movement. Government so serves as a means for repulsing government or other citizens, but not for creating common civic culture. Sovereign individuals in Argentina no match for the brute power of tyrants. The government undermines a collective, low might counter government oppression. Part 4 is framing. Social injustice is the root of masculine violence. A prime society for external violence. Shepherd Hughes 04. Attention to the low balances of everyday life, shift our attention to inequalities, first class ability to sensitize ourselves and maximizing risk, recognizing privilege and style practices, dim neck as normative behavior. We need hypervigilance to everyday acts of violence or in a genocide as possible. Expressions of social illusion normalize violence and social formation. Violence is encompassing control projects, assaults, selective survival, mass violence is part of a continuum. Evaluate probability first. 1% doctrine kills decision making. Since any action has some risk, so avoiding risk freezes action prevents change. Their risk constructed to preserve the status quo. The same strategy used to block every progressive reform like ending slavery and civil rights. We need to embrace the state's heuristic. Our argument is not that the state is good, but that learning the levers of power is key to confronting it. Zanoni 14. Resistance to government is not limited to rejecting the content struggles with the government questions over simplifications of complex political rationalities. Government heuristic, but let's careful differentiation rather than overarching demonization of power. I think that engagement would not avoid the revolution attempting to use power, but plenty of cards are available not to apathy but to convincing activism. Within education, this is uniquely key. The judge's obligation to endorse political education to prevent ceding power to row 6. Depoliticization of life suggests a crisis of democracy. People develop indifference to civic engagement. Educators need to challenge the assumption that politics is ever. Politics will be determined exclusively by government leaders. Debate over pressing social problems offers individuals hope in shaping the conditions that bear on their lives. To realize activism and citizen access to decision making, educators need to be at the forefront of the defense of the most progressive gains of the state.
So more stuff, I'll flash it.
Use reasonability on T in theory for the after the bread line of the existence of turnaround and a carded solvency advocate. 8 point prevents unjustified wins. Even with a lot of defense, you still lose without offense. Back to a counter interpretation, which is worse on comparison. You shouldn't lose without being marginally abusive. Only if your abuse was enough for your opponent to lose B point. It increases self debate. The barriers are less than semi-true privilege. Theories to give details, make clear reasonability to your C point. My answer comes from the topic literature, so don't punish me for the lack of research. T point. Is there a bidirectional answer they can read on any T in theory? It proves that the attribute of reasonability should compensate because violence within the grounds of what is structurally fair and have access to the valve, then it proves that they should have access to it. E point is I've been reading this app for a month, disclosing the wiki and premier debate proves this app is the most common app on the topic. The truth is that if they don't have answers to it, it's their laziness. It's not mean that the app is not fair.
One more framework card, you can put it in the framework where you can just flow it here.
Standpoint epistemology is the best starting point for moral decisions. Other methods exclude some viewpoints and makes true analysis of reality impossible. Mills 1. Theoretically take place in intellectual realm dominated by frame perspectives of life experience, the privilege of concepts spontaneously occur as a result of hegemonic idealization facts. Dominant concepts distort truth realities, while the doctrines necessary for action navigating these realities will be absent. Realizations require validation of distinct experiences. As a result, our perceptions are no longer ignorant to realities. Ideal observers should have been able to see them, yet they did not.
I will flash you this.
Okay, before the process.
Yep.
Want to flash your?
I'm just gonna go. I'm just gonna get your document. Okay, so let me get my water.
Is it under the table?
No, that's Alice's, isn't it?
No, I think that one is yours.
And is it behind there? There's
That's it.
That's the one. Okay, ready?
Mhm.
Let's talk about the last argument, right? What does it mean to have a standpoint epistemology?
It means we use ethics that start from the position of oppressed groups rather than abstract theories that.
Why have you started from the position of oppressed groups?
Sorry, I didn't hear the first part of the question. What did you say?
Why have you started from the standpoint of oppressed groups?
The argument is a theory that defaults to resisting oppression or resisting power structures the way the AC framework
So like,
establishes.
my question is, why have you adopted the standpoint of the oppressed in the same way that Bill says you should?
What do you mean why?
So like,
It's
how
the best
you
starting point
said
for
that we have a
resisting
standard of
forms of
resisting oppression, but that's just like a framework in the same way that any framework is. Why have you adopted the epistemology of the oppressed?
Well, the argument is resisting a framework that would default to resisting forms of oppression and power structures, and the rest of the AC Speech Act adopts and looks at people who are oppressed as a starting point rather than vaguely assuming that
Let's
people are
talk about
equal
your-
or starting with some types of
Okay, let's
abstract
talk about your
theories.
framework arguments now.
Mhm.
What constitutes an abstract solution?
Something that is divorced from action or divorced from material realities that people face.
Okay. Alright. Now on the plain text. How do we determine who is an intimate partner or violence offender?
It's a crime by law. If you were convicted, then
So
you
like
would not.
only for people who have been convicted in the past.
Currently, there's a loophole. People can be convicted of intimate partner violence against a married or a dating partner. If you are convicted for intimate partner violence against someone you were married to, you were barred from possessing
Okay,
a gun.
And
If someone you were dating, you were not. The plan
why
makes
does
it so
the
that
plan
people are
cause a
barred from
substitution effect?
possessing permission payments. What?
Why does the plan cause a substitution effect?
The Maskia 15 evidence is empirical studies that prove that it does not cause substitution effect of other weapons. The Dixon evidence also provides further analytical warrants. I can go through them or not.
So like this argument says that
Which one?
people, the Dixon 93 evidence says that victims can run away, like survivors can run away before they use the guns. Do you have like a warrant for why that's true? Like any statistics that say this is true?
So the argument is that since shotguns are not as concealable, they give people more time to escape. It's not necessarily run away in the sense of like never come back or like always leave your partner, but in the sense that if you see someone with a shotgun, you
Okay.
have more of time to escape or
Let's
get
go
out
to
of the
Shepherd
situation.
Hughes now.
Whereas pulling out a gun from like under your coat
Why
is a lot
does
easier.
social violence or structural violence spill over to larger wars?
There's a couple warrants. The first one is that everyday acts of violence normalize it such that we don't see violence as exceptional. So when greater
Okay,
risks
yeah,
of
I
violence
understand.
break
What's
out,
the
we don't
second one?
implement. It also means that we are taught to believe that certain forms of like large-scale violence are always going to happen, or we see them as like happening within our lives, so that we like overestimate the probability of these risks.
Okay. Yeah. So now on the last part of my question is the role of valid resisting position dominant ideology. If we prove that you make it worse, or that you increase death, was that prove that we are a part of your role of the valid? That you impose ideology?
Vaguely increasing death of people is not necessarily a power structure.
Okay. Sorry, bro. About 2:30 left. You know, I just sent it. Okay.
2:30 left, you said?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
5 out case.
Alright, let me see.
5 case.
What did you get the big test?
I don't know, just came in here first, I guess.
I didn't get your email.
Okay. Yeah, I definitely just sent it, so.
I believe you. I just didn't get that. There you go.
Okay, is everyone ready?
Yeah, just be a bit clear switching off, like next off.
Sure.
Wait,
Yeah,
Take
one
a
second.
bit louder than normal.
Yeah.
I'm just saving the one here after this crash.
Adam, ready?
The standards minimizing existential risk A is the greatest aggregate harm to health and well-being, which are both impacts of AC, which proves that since we call FCB is emergency exception, even theories generally say we ought to follow the rule of access to survival humanities and exception to annual world theories and denies our ability to achieve anything. C, ethical uncertainty means that we prevent existential risk and ensure community value regardless of true world theories and epistemic prerequisite of Ostrom. Once you have spread the actually might be we are uncertain theories value versus regularly recognized values to the future according to ensure future humanity best way to increase future value. Next off. States regulate control of until now court case and legal press can prove federal action violates state control over gun management state. State governments legally assert the primary sovereign states prevent regulation on this order more often than any practice of individual right to arms, guarantees the state constitution, statewide firearms, for to match challenge, broad understands the federal right to power over guns. Federal to protect the environment, patent, and aid. Because of the federal arms are causing economic events to be constituted locally, it makes sense to give more control of state county official regulatory money who are better positioned for the cost benefit analysis of their communities, especially environment climate change, the equation RPR is purely localized area, and the fact creates a money which military for more federal oversight of the basic idea leave more decision up to the states to sound one warming, causes extinction stone hand 14. Earth's warming surviving that we were seeing on the state alarm and the state exchange that we start burning fossil fuels, we can't be rebelling matches the as we get control of it, we'll meet our extinction barriers. 1 of 3 leading academic challenges will come from under nutrition from reduced food use, fast food and test, heat waste, disaster, injections, disease benefits will regularly be outweighed by the impacts of huge shrimp, farm crops, and livestock struggle with thermal and water stress, stable cost base, and temperature limit turns. The case 1 is that the most depressed and least advantaged will suffer the most since they cannot afford the high food prices that are caused by warming. Second is they cannot access the sort of shelters that they'll need against rising sea levels. Next off. Counterplan text of 1590 states in Washington, D.C. should ban the private ownership of handguns for anti-violent violence defenders that could not cohabiting dating relationship. Gun control policy should be passed with the state passing a federal policy inefficient and unenforceable. Cut 86. Certain part region proposes steps to prevent control over state legislative federal laws apply state have as much autonomy as possible and limited federal law enforcement of apparatus and private at federal level and corresponds to state release no need for gun control to differ sharply from one state to another. Also proves that they have no there's no subsidy evidence if there's no federal regulatory structure or federal policy that can enforce the act. Next off. Interpretation the affirmative must advocate for prohibition on the ability to privately own handguns. They now specify a group of people to which the ban applies. Oxford Dictionary defines ban as legally prohibited. Collins Dictionary defines private ownership as being owned by a private individual rather than the state. Violation the applied text specifies only domestic abusers who have been accused of it in the past. Hence, bans require blanket prohibition of private ownership. What matters is not the restriction certain people on private ownership itself. McGavity 96. Ownership applies to anything that can be used for hunting. What must be done to prevent all private ownership by getting all sorts of firearms by requiring all firearms owners turn to their weapons. Gun bans apply to everyone. Scalia 8. DC bans handgun for as might be making it a crime. Now standards. Net benefits limits allowing selection of a certain group of people exposed to topic their term allows follow plan that specifies a group of people type of handgun and region the USA is research for that research every app for A. Just following those on the exposed research fund president app around B clash. Only the apps for making a one-sided discussion turns that I can't meaningful clash or make that answer. There are too many apps. C is predictability. There are always better practice on cases allowing them to share click sites like generic sites equal access to offense, hyper-specific groups, no link dissect and shift unique to appear for the proven when they read as specific to best abusers on substitution effect. D is topic literature and incentivize the applicant class farthest from the core blitz since most authors discuss blanket handgun bans. E is field context prohibition topic that is clear to distinct the controls limiting acid of handgun with section population, not a ban but a restriction. Case 82. At the negative meeting American Society of Technology Analysts with responding to distinct control prohibition which she characterized extreme proposition. But not only is a prohibition with legally guaranteed from control but as a matter of political reality prohibition activity impediment control gun control laws mainly use this because gun owners assume that they are part of the confiscation program and the core of the centers was blanket ban is desirably app students is already better since most states cells the majority of public argue about gun control adding exception lessons solve their advantage and escape the fact that officers centers of particular groups who need guns for self-defense. This outweighs they still get advantage specific to the group which captures their offense but less negative apply broader grants against the same specificity leveling the playing field and first is fairness to vote debaters of competitive activity Winston Lawson and Vallis vote for center getting enough better cheap education schools fund debate for its educational value drop debater once around consulting review or fairly skewed from Eastern time other ultimate ground strategy check use healthy 1 year has strategic plus 2 rejected arguments no punishment is let it separate restart the 1 year which means 7 minutes of time to firm the ultimate strategy and use of competing in terms 1 for
which is at least arbitrary even with broad line because no principal reason why the broad line determines what's reasonable. 2, reason the card forces the race of volume invasion to increase the view sense was reasonable as comparative and get away with just defense on the area and encourage them to toe the line. 3, keeping your terms for minimizing intervention provides better rules to the offense defense paradigm and no RBIs. 1, illogical RBIs and you should vote for something since they are fair, but that doesn't mean follow since there is no practical reason to vote me down. 2, chills theory RBIs to score checking abuse since the abusive debate industry abusive practice and debate theory. Next off. Sanders wins at Institute momentum from New Hampshire. Youth support favorability polls. Hillary loses to GOP King 210. In New Hampshire, the Senate 84% of people voted for Sanders. Maybe the most correct politician in America. New Hampshire voters chose Bernie Sanders over Hillary Clinton. 91%, 95% polls determined Sanders the only candidate with a net positive favorability. Sanders has been independent his entire political career. Independence coming out for Bernie in big numbers, which is censored in every available poll showing Bernie Sanders running against every Republican candidate. Bernie forced Hillary. Republican leaders say they prefer to go against Hillary. The candidate who Berkeley people trust went to youth and vote who bids voters better head-to-head who garners support of the African Americans is the winning candidate. Plan pushes voters to pledge doing them in the general election. Walsh 15. Obama prosecuted police the issue of advice functional force. You just have to be a single issue voter. When Democrats said to Obama that could be on use for Bernie Sanders and control is one issue. Clinton said to Sanders left hand has trouble doing actual avenue. Most notably, his vote against Brady bill. He voted for entering that bill to make it possible to carry check on Amtrak. You see, Senator from Providence State that suffers little gun violence. He could hurt him in the Democrat mayor Clinton tapped Sanders playing defense. GOP president would end the Iran nuclear deal 2C12 on. If the next president gets a deal with Iran, she can undo it. Of course, the being a promises actually lead to Iran exchange for purpose on nuclear weapons. President candidates who have burned cancel the all Republicans gave their promise by using president authority to reimpose the Senate statute. U.S. withdrawal of anger. European invasion countries result in lobbying less than likely to impose their own sanctions. The Iran comes first time resuming equilibrium. Extinction. Stevens 13. Negotiate with Iran succeeded to fail Tehran's acquisition of Bollywood. South nuclear arms race that would see Saudi Arabia turning Egypt to the nuclear non-prolife would be shattered conflict draw. The Israel to preempt the nuclear strike. This now region steps forward turns the intellectual reality. Iran has backed the nuclear site. Tehran to step back from the rainfall because of its own calculation. Iran has really sure prepared to call. Case. They'll extend the role about the reason why to take out, but 1 is that extinction out with structural violence. A is reversibility. Humanity can't be properly after extinction, but structural violence can be reversed. B is future generation structural violence only hurts the current generation. Extinction ends all and potential generation in the future. And 2 is that the role of violence just an impact filter. If we went there impacts outweighs, then you should still go negative. Anti-state structural violence outweighs. That's your Shepard Hughes evidence, but structural violence doesn't escalate, hinder it. 2K. Anger did not give to hostility and aggression. Some conflicts don't conflict precedent groups. We are concerned factors in a conflict escalate based on individual aggressiveness, different violence, present gun and large violence always has multiple causes and possible factors remain unexplored. Now on the reasonability arguments. On reasonability, 1 is my view story proves that he is severely flawed and has interpretation topics wrong. Even if he had to prove to justify an interpretation and choose one, Waste said that theirs is bad. Second said they cause a race to bond, which Waste and say always told line competing interprets creates reasonable norms for the entire community rather than just a case by case basis. Third is that only competing interprets prevents future abuse practice by holding debates consistent rules instead of letting everyone on a case by case basis. Meaning that they that's what exists real abuses by through competing interpretation. Now they offer right lane turn ground and Slavic act. 1 is that's not reasonable. Even the Slavic act is not sufficient. They still split limits. Second, all RT arguments that they aren't a part of the topic literature, which means that they are not based here, they are not part of the topic. Third is that our research for this argument disproves that they expand out of ground abuse since we have to research every potential act, even those on the fringe, which disproves their argument why their right line is reasonable. There's one thing I didn't read.
Yeah, which one?
In the T show.
This is whisper.
No, I read the first reason why I was not.
Yeah.
Okay. Alright.
Status of the counterclaim.
Conditional.
Alright. Let's go through the additional argument. So T. So you missed up the Oxford Dictionary card. You highlighted ban as legally prohibited, but then the next sentence of the card that's lined down says gives an example of he was banned from driving for a year, which clearly implies a ban can apply to one person.
So this is why we have two definitions, right? You can place a ban on an object, like you can say the app could advocate banning ice cream or banning fake sodas, but that wouldn't be topical since it doesn't ban private ownership.
Okay, your private ownership definition just says banning private individuals rather than the state. Why does that prove the absent T?
The key of this interpretation is not that you can ban private ownership like for a certain group. That's not possible. All our evidence proves that in order to ban private ownership,
So your
you ban the possibility of
McCavity evidence says one way to ban all private ownership is by banning everyone, not that it
No, I
means
don't
that.
think it says that.
It says what must be done is to ban all private ownership by banning all sales of firearms, implying that is a way of banning all
I
private
think you're
ownership.
misreading what that says. What it's saying is that in order to ban guns, that is what it is.
Okay, your Scalia evidence says in DC a handgun ban applied to everyone. Why
Alright,
is this
so the
comprehensive?
Scalia evidence is from a decision, which is the Supreme Court
Right.
interpretation
It said
of the
that-
Constitution, which says that legally bans on private ownership
No, it
are
doesn't.
bans
It
on
says
all
the
handguns.
DC ban applied to everyone. You lined down one sentence. It said DC bans handgun possession by making it a crime. That is literally the only thing you
Yeah,
have
it's a
down.
legal interpretation of what the DC law
Why does
is.
by
Banning
making it a
handgun
crime?
possession.
Why does the words by making it a crime prove that it applies to everyone? Even if the card said this, you definitely didn't read anything in it that said that.
It proves, our argument is that it bans handgun possession by making it a crime for
Alright,
everyone,
Alex,
right?
what ground did you lose on this app? We've been reading this app for like a month now. You guys have read case next and did you
I've
vote?
debated Harvard Westlake twice on this topic. This is the first time. This is the second time I've debated. Last time when I debated Nick, he read the Willerson app.
Okay. I hate Chris and I hate your teammates. You've read positions against this app. You have prep.
That's not. I haven't debated you on it.
So you
Second,
just
it's
try
not
to
about
exclude-
that. It's
Okay.
not about that, and it's about what you
Okay.
justify whether you allow the proliferation of non-topical apps similar to this one.
Okay, the app has already been passed as a larger bill and just closes a loophole. Your uniqueness evidence says a lot of things are state level, but not everything. How does this account for the specificities of the plan?
So I think the argument is that would be bad,
That's
right?
a no. Okay,
Well,
elections.
I don't understand
So
that
you
part.
say elections, you read states. How is this a net benefit to states given that?
So Bernie
if-
Sanders doesn't vote on the bill.
Okay,
There's
so what is
actually-
the internal link on elections? It's that Bernie
The
Sanders
internal
will
link-
flip flop, which causes them to go to
That's
Hillary.
one of the options.
What
So
are
if
the
the
others?
plan goes through Congress as it does through USFG, Bernie either has to vote yes or no on the plan, right? If he votes yes, then
Okay,
he should
your
be against, then
link
he's-
evidence proves that Hillary is to the left of Bernie. Where does this say anything about flip flopping or why flip flopping is bad?
So that would be an implication we would draw the two in our.
So an implication
not
that was
sure.
not in the card is the link from the NC
Okay,
dissent.
here's-
That seems not
Okay, the link in the NC is not the flip flop.
What is the link then?
Sorry, the argument is that Clinton is to the left of Bernie, and if gun control becomes a large issue on a national level and a federal level, then he'll lose the election because voters will, see that Bernie has, is stands to the right of Clinton on gun control.
Alright, same strands. Same strands. Opposite.
$123.
This music is so.
Yeah, it's too bad.
Is there a bell tab?
Oh yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Alright, where is T, case, states, federalism, elections. I'll try to stand over there again.
T, case, federalism, elections.
States was after case.
Okay.
I'm not sure if it's that.
Case top down.
What?
They're in a little cloud.
Should tell me that.
I don't know. Do you think? I don't think it'll be a problem.
What?
I don't think it'll be a problem.
Okay. Sorry.
T, case, states, federalism, elections. Okay, maybe.
Are we gonna tell him? I think we should.
Yeah, tell him. Just be like, hey, we're having you around. Yeah, that'd be good.
Hey, guys, we're trying to guys, you can look at because you can hear a lot. So very clear.
What's up, Jonas? Was this the
1A.
Okay. Everyone ready?
Yes, T, case, states, federalism, elections.
They've got to cut that out.
Reading T is a link. Both 99 since IBVs were pegged with a lack of education and acknowledgement within academia. They create rules to jump through. We can never talk about IBV, which is the same excuse to never talk about IBV. Every red tape law prevents survivors from speaking out, reaffirms their views. This is a voting issue. The user procedure requirements of background prison reinforces the prosecution towards rejection of those procedures. Posting 96 establishments, voting medical translation, markers of the United States participants, arguable concepts doesn't need to be supports, reputation, or celebrated forms, or dismissed by some such forms of authority previously established testimony to serve some tradition forms of authority scholars. She encourages agents to employ the due challenge the points argument authority counter. HR, the applicant and those strong concepts for IBV dating goals, expected to qualify in the late U.S. Attorney's Office 13 1 proof and amidst the public control of session virus and able complete the misdemeanor domestic violence and affecting some environment and equal domestic violence system that ways there's some specificity specifically in the context of the plan of 6 is they get a promotion. Oxford Dictionary, the continuation of their definition says that he was banned from driving for a year, which proves that if they can apply to one person standard, this clash management will drastically for between colleges abuse of safeguards felon misdemeanors suspected from the impact point forcing that to perjure joiner they respond to the specifics of the plan. So it's if we don't really just have the same connects with they still education people to make specific to make the real solutions are also there to be your own self. Anything you want to listen to them substantial ways of 25 years about happy skills is the only purpose of being how is there to keep long-term skills and the leader appearances. One is less important than always reply. As of the right symbols like a fairness taxis, which is very much and everything around is their offense. I already answered the Oxford MPH. You can have the caveat evidence also makes sense that one way of banning is to ban everyone. It does not define it that way. So we also just the DC ban apply to everyone, but there's not a definition there. Offense is all the same because it's functionally that they cannot predict what the affirmative is. The first 25 is 10, more second turn every diss that takes to any group of equal 90, so offense is really worse because 8 point next tactics until the arch. I already read the AC when they were the 6 right after the 1 every point times 2. It's taken back to the affirmation in C point, where it's all the after, whereas these sets don't really worse. Second, US you second, all the after 12 average, majorly, also goes on targets equal, the distance they come response to third level, some probabilities in errors. So I should want to take the their conditional probability, one of companies plan for disclosure, checks with meetings after a month, and those coming out and everything obviously predicts from Meredith. Today confirms all of their dissets comply. They say the app has been passed, which proves that the app proposed offense, but they can read for evidence that the app did not work in specific countries because there were peers. They say hates, but the evidence is not about a ban, it doesn't about any words in the literature case. They have conceded the Trophanus evidence that your role as judges reject oppressive ideology, which means that vague ethical reasons to refer to the anti-framework are not relevant. Also, they tell the dissents first people are not included right now, so vague impacts of trying to make like valuable and not relevant people already do not have value. Like the African reference, second reference that 1% risk doctrine is always used to exclude individual voices and stop progressive change like the Cheney risk. It's the Cheney doctrine that says we should just intervene if there's a risk. It's a good idea. That's also is it used to stop every type of progressive reform like slavery and civil rights. You should not to the African education because of the backlash. Massive 15 proves that the plan is using part of vouchers and that benefit now states. First, primitive both station of course, governments open or Harvard to governments with their the same governments working together with that relations serve the minimum custodies. All your from the donors who try to apply this is a federal rule block. 6 responsibility lies focused on work responsibility for Harvard. Create also federal policies works in just getting existing policy legislation and keep critiquing by national policy of what's taken and using the best that can. The team is school board was the most mostly like using the specific federal election. That federal election created something they work. The state lost these contractors with and places black relations to those stricter ones. Federalism. First, no, like the African existing policy for rate abuses. I don't think the new policy just expanded. Second, multiple causes. EBA back 14. They keep your proposals going down existing relations to organize market federalism rule. Research the federal government also on data comes to talk about the state Harvard, which is not solution to regulate farmers and necessary relations to Congress with the constitutional and other government procedures one after both those of government elections. First, betting Sanders will win on popular establishment is support matters more shocks to 10 Sanders to 13 pledges, 9 or DNC. Rules and actions to regard 6 or 10 Hillary for 12 they'll get 6 Democrats, establishment that like you. Read Sanders to the whole climb, know you. Uniqueness of the anarchist choice, that's stress and down the class of the people, do our goods effectively for link where in that turn also try to place immensely popular black person in game over Jensen. 15, 80% Americans support the black person, and that's Republicans by 60, 8% of the things in favor. In the earth, policy for people create soccer next season, partner. You reject segment, the others would be you high and popular for 8.5. Who see that sounds like planning, Congress, but doesn't require every senator seems to be popular with an average viewpoint, even if votes from the local flip-floppers, and everyone supports the 5 million extremely flip-flop with control Jacobson. 117 Newland, once every voter Sanders and voted to the family with progressive gun makers with protections calling in. 8 flip-flop new station senators was going to cover the 5 village here, so probably should take another look. That sounds like a flip-flop to us.
That's right.
Can you delete what you didn't read?
Yeah, let me just fix it and send you an email.
Okay, sure.
Okay. Just a second.
Okay.
You read 2:30? What?
Yeah. It's called the same doc, but it's at the top.
We'll see where.
Order is gonna be
Overview? Where should I flip?
we can close on the case.
Overview, then T.
Then states, federalism, the NC, elections.
States, federalism, NC, elections.
NC is like the first half.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Let me open it up.
Sure.
Did they just replace the other one?
It's just all at the top now.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. Everyone ready?
First framing issue, they have conceded arguments why RBIs are bad, which means that all their criticism of T has conceded argument that we should not lose for reading T, that the act of reading T is not a reason why we should lose. That means that they cannot win an offensive reason that we should lose for reading topicality. Second is that they have conceded arguments why extinction with structural violence on reversibility and future generation, which means that extension of the role of bad is nonsense, since the role of bad is just an impact filter for their argument solution that they cannot win. That means we just need to win a risk that we solve extinction. Say they don't have any offense in the dissent. Now on the case argument, extend or actually not a case, on the topicality. All the arguments why we should lose for reading T. One is missing internal link. All the arguments prove that T is a bad norm, not the act of reading T is wrongful. Maybe that the idea that we should that rules are bad, but this doesn't mean that my act of reading this rule is the reason why I should lose. Second, turn T is a necessary check. Even if I don't go for reading, means the act won't shift there. I have to be away class with whatever the purpose T is and exclude your act to force you to answer my arguments. Third, missing warrant is drop the argument versus drop the video. Getting rid of T means I can't win out, which is sufficient deterrent. Fourth is turn. Losing for reading T kills substance engagement and forces me to go for T, and the new honor originally increases inclusion and decreases engagement in opposition. All their opposite T proves engagement. Good acts of the offense better. All the weighing arguments prove that this outweighs the key of T. Fifth, that they concede all rewards why they don't get any RBIs. First, they chill. This is illogical, but there's no reason why we should lose for accusing them of being unfair. Second, is that they chill discussion of legitimate theory, which only increases abuse. Which proves that there's no reason why I should vote on this key of T. Now, the federalism just said now going for all concede. Not going to all concede the argument that there is no link that there is multiple alternative causes. And the counterplay now going for is conditional. Kick the counterplay now on the NC. The extend argument that says that this is the largest possible harm to health and well-being, which means that we outweigh that by an order of magnitude. Now it's in the argument that extinction outweighs because of reversibility, that structural violence can be reversed, and that things like domestic violence only affect people in the status quo and the current generation, but extinction affects all people in the future. Now go back on the case on his arguments about why extinction is an abstraction away from partner violence. First, they say that people are not included now, but one is that this is nonsense. Extinction includes all voices in the state. It treats all people equally rather than excluding some. Second is that we have proven that the extinction impact turns the case into harms health and other impacts just as bad, which means that we link to the argument about disadvantage. Next, they say there are 1% extra. One is that if we win a substantial risk of the disadvantage, this proves the 1% extra doctrine. Second is that we are obviously not equitable to the Cheney doctrine of intervention. We defend the status quo, which means that there is no internal link. If you are very unsure about what these impacts are, then you should not allow new to their extrapolations. So it was unclear in the last speech. The framing issue said they consider all arguments why extinction outweighs their role of ballot from the 1 and C, which were extended as a reason why you should buy extinction as impact to the role of ballot elections. Extend or unique is evidence that Sanders will win. Now, there are 4 warrants for this. First is that favorability culture that young people as well as other sections of the population likes Bernie Sanders for his likability as well as trust him as a candidate above any other candidate, which is that he can win. Second is that momentum from New Hampshire, and I will prove that he has momentum among young people across the nation. The media has jumped on the bandwagon. They will continue to let him win so long as he doesn't mess up on gun control. Third is that he proven that he attracts minority voters, Hispanic voters, and African American voters disproportionately vote for Bernie Sanders, which proves that he will win. Fourth is that he is an independent who attracts other independent voters to vote in the primaries because other independent voters are attracted to his message of wealth inequality, but that this message will only remain in place as long as wealth inequality is the major issue of the election rather than gun control. Now, extend our link evidence at the Wall Street 15 that GOP will be Clinton. That's actually unique evidence that GOP will be Clinton by that Sanders wins against the GOP. Now, their argument here is that the Sanders will lose, but I prefer evidence for the 4 reasons. They only cite the argument from New Hampshire, and Iowa. The argument is better and takes into multiple features as such as favorability polls, which are a better understanding. And second, said their evidence is not good on this question. You should call for after round. It never says what they power tag it to be, which means that you should prefer our evidence on this question. Next, they say that Sanders. Next, to say that the plan is popular, but this doesn't answer the interlink argument. Is that even if it's popular across the Democrats, this will only mean that Clinton will win. It doesn't mean that the Sanders will lose. Which means that this has no argument. Next, they say that fiat solves the link. What is our interpretation of fiat? Means that they need to defend the political implication of the plan. This is key to fair engagement because otherwise he denies key access to grounds such as politics, this as well as multiple questions of federalism, like federalism and states, which means that this denies their argument. And second is that we should defend the implication of the plan since we can see how it affects the implication of how it affects the real world actions, abstracting away, which is precisely what their evidence criticizes. Next, they say that it is not perceived as a political argument. This is nonsense. The Sanders still has to vote for Miller regardless of and whether it's popular, which means regardless, even if you have to cast a vote regardless of whether the plan is popular, which means they still link to this argument. Next, now extend our impact of necessity. Choosing part 1 that the GOP president will roll back the deal because they will have repeatedly said that, well, now extend our status 13 evidence that this causes uranium proliferation, which collapses nuclear deterrence in the Middle East and escalates and causes these really preemptive strikes, and Saudi Arabia and Turkey will join the nuclear club, which is causing global nuclear war. And this is a conceded extinction of attacks. If we even run a risk of this, that means that you should vote negative, since we have the only offense under our framework of reducing existential risk. Now, lastly, on the argument that says standards are already flip-flop. One is that even he said that he has said rhetoric about why he will support gun control, but he has never actually voted on a gun control bill, which is a framing issue. He has changed his position maybe in debates, but this does not change the issue that he has not voted on a bill, which means that people have not held him to this kind of liability. Second is that this argument just says that Hillary called him out on being a flip-flopper, not that people have recognized that he's a flip-flopper, which means that you should prefer evidence since that Bernie is not being called out for being a flip-flopper now, which means that even if Hillary called him in that one single instance, that doesn't mean the entire nation has realized that he is a flip-flopper, which means that you should default on this question. So under the debate, first that we just need to win a risk of an existential impact. They have no offense, and we have won that extinction of those largest impact for reversibility in future generations. Second is that all their arguments do not apply to the specificity of our dissent about Bernie versus Hillary. They're about Democrats versus GOP, but that's not what our dissent is about.
Okay. I had 129. 123. No. Sorry, I had 123. Okay, 123. Oops, I did 11. Sorry. 123. Okay. Case. Is this it? I'm so sick.
Is your entire team sick?
Yeah, we'll stay together. Because like the flu dropped out. I've been sick for a while. I'm not gonna get sick. There.
Order 12.
I just said it.
Oh, yeah, case.
What?
Case dissent.
But when you were just standing things on a shared house and everything.
Everyone ready?
AAC framework is a game over issue for two reasons. First is the extension of Wolf that proves that IPVs are uniquely marginalized educational spaces, and discussion of IPV above other impacts is the most significant thing. This is the extension of Trifonus and the extension of Wolf on T, which proves that IPV is uniquely important, and a thing you should include in your ballot calculus. He has not explained why the dissent specifically applies in the context of IPV, just why it generically creates forms of oppression and structural balance. It proves that Affirmative outweigh, and you should vote affirmative on the case. Second is the number 3 I extended with Trifonus, which is cold conceded. You should not vote negative just because some people will backlash, because that's inevitable with any legislation that is progressive. Everyone backlashed against civil rights and slavery. It caused tons of death, but you should still vote AF and do the right thing if the AF is a good idea, which proves that under the one you see framing cards, which are the only thing that accesses your role with the judge as opposed to vague ethical claims on the post-fiat layer, then you should default to doing the right thing, which means stopping the violence that comes from intimate partner violence, which proves that Massia 15 is empirical solvency of plan reduced intimate partner violence and is a stronger reason to vote affirmative. He has also conceded that is the reason you should vote affirmative on case. I have also win that the dissent is not relevant, which proves that you should vote after even if I lose these framing arguments. And he wins the yourself. The first argument that is important is Jensen. This says that the plan is extremely popular, and the argument is not itself a reason to vote affirmative, but the two implications make this damning that he has not responded to. The A point is that since AF is extremely popular, fiat solves the link. His interpretation of fiat, because we talk about implementation, when we talk about what happens, doesn't make sense, because in a world in which the plan passes, not everyone votes for the plan. A lot of people in Congress vote for the plan, but if the plan is popular, as our evidence indicates, the majority of Congress would still vote for it, and Bernie would not have to. Which means there would be no necessarily link to the dissent. It would also prove that even if Bernie did vote on the plan, he would not appear as a flip-flopper because everyone supports the ban and it's considered an IPV bill, not a gun bill, which proves that he would not be flip-flopping over previous issues, so it would not uniquely push voters to Clinton. That's especially true in the context of the Jacobson evidence, which significantly mitigates their impact and means that the Jensen argument is the reason you should vote affirmative. Jacobson says that Bernie Sanders has already flip-flopped on gun control, as been pointed out. His responses really missed the boat. His first one is that he has never voted on gun control, but he does not identify a distinction of voting versus talking about flip-flopping. Hillary has been pointing out that Sanders has been flip-flopping for months now in multiple debates and has been coming out with politics. That's why this article is analyzing the way that's been talked about in the media, which proves that he is already seen as a flip-flopper and there's no unique link to the case. He says that this just says Hillary called him out, but it's not that everyone else has, which also is misreading the evidence. The Jacobson evidence is really good and proves there is no unique link to the plan. Even if there was a marginal unique link to the plan, you should not evaluate it because Jensen proves that he wouldn't look like a flip-flopper, and especially wouldn't look like a flip-flopper any more than he is, and he wouldn't even have to go for the plan because it would pass anyway. But those are not even relevant arguments because you can vote out under the framing arguments at the top of the case. His weighing arguments don't link to IPV specifically. There. I have another one here if they are